Hello, great to see you again, and great to have you back for another installment of Planning Wisdom of the Super Rich. I'm your host, Ryan Ruff. I've got Devang Patel standing by. He'll be joining me again momentarily. But first, look, just a quick note for you, our audience. You know, every episode, Devang and I are touching on a new, complex financial topic, typically a strategy or wisdom that the super rich are utilizing in their day-to-day practices when it comes to their wealth management strategies. We're going to tap into Devang's experiences, his lessons learned through the work with his clients, and ultimately talk about some strategies that could be implemented into you and yours, their financial strategy as a whole. So, hey, that being said, we've got a great topic today. We're actually going to be circling back a little bit, and we're going to be talking about the stress testing process as a whole. So if you weren't able to join us for our very first episode where Devang and I kind of covered an overview of the stress testing process, well, hey, you're in for a great one today. We're going to be diving deep into what a stress test is and just exactly how it can be performed and B, utilized to, enhance or impact your personal, your family wealth, or even your business's situation as a whole. So that being said, let's go ahead and bring Devang out to join us for today's episode. Devang, how are you doing this morning? Good to see you.
I'm great, Ryan. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Hey, we've had some good conversations on this show so far. We're circling back to one of our favorite topics, the stress test today. And I think a good place for us to start our conversation today is just purely by the fact that one of the smartest financial moves that individuals can make, specifically our listeners and our viewers, that you guys could make is just looking at what those strategies are being done by those much wealthier than ours. To see if you could potentially adopt some of these strategies and incorporate them into your own plan. And one of those extremely valuable tools that we see the super rich doing on a regular basis is called a stress test. It's a process for seeing how well positioned financially an individual is. That's the 10,000 foot view of it, if you will. So Devang, I think, we all know a stress test, like I just mentioned, best practice for the very wealthy. Let's have you start by giving, our audience, maybe if they didn't, tune in for our very first episode, just start by giving us an overview on what exactly is a stress test, and then we'll get into the weeds of it.
Absolutely, Ryan. So, stress testing is a process where a professional or a team of professionals carefully reviews the financials and related actions that you have taken. The goal is to determine answers to two vital questions. Number one, are there any mistakes in your existing wealth planning efforts and solutions that you might have already implemented that need to be addressed? Is a solution you currently got unlikely to behave as you really need it to? And number two, are you missing out on significant opportunities that could improve your financial situation?
Right. Two key questions there, Devang. And why do you think in particular that this process is being used so frequently by the extremely wealthy in particular?
Ryan, what we find is that stress testing tends to be very effective at catching errors from the routine to the serious ones that
Mm-hmm.
could negatively impact a family's wealth. It's also a great way to identify better ways than those that are currently in place to address wealth management needs and goals because things change as we go along. It can even from time to time spot actions that might have been taken that may be pushing the limits of what is legal or even going beyond those limits. So, given the amount of money we are talking about with the super rich, these are typically people with a net worth of over 500 million or more. They are very interested in discovering if any of those conditions are present in their lives.
Of course, because any issues for somebody with that significant level of wealth, those issues are going to compound, and that's going to, obviously take a big hit on that $500 million net worth or more. So, Devang, if I'm the average listener listening to our conversation today, I'm thinking, well, I don't have that kind of money. So, let me ask you this then. Yes, this strategy sounds like it's great for the super rich, but is stress testing something that is reserved only for the super rich, or can someone else with, a normal, shall we say, level of net worth utilize a stress testing process as well?
That's a great question. So, the answer is absolutely not. Stress testing
Okay.
is not limited to only the very affluent. While stress testing originated among the wealthiest, it's becoming very much part of lives of individuals and families at all levels of affluence. And it's becoming an even bigger part of what elite wealth managers, the ones who are looking to help their clients make smart and comprehensive financial decisions, are offering today. It really is a best practice that makes a lot of sense, and a lot more of us are able to engage in it today than ever before.
Of course. And Devang, when we're looking at the stress testing process specifically, is stress testing for somebody with $500 million or more? And then looking at somebody who doesn't have nearly that level of wealth, or is it the same process, when working with two different individuals with two very different levels of wealth?
It is. The complexity of the process, Ryan, always depends on the financial complexity of the person who is
Mm.
having the stress test done. But beyond that, we do see a major difference between stress testing the actions of the super rich and those clients with less wealth. Generally speaking, the stress test conducted for the super rich tends to uncover fewer errors and also fewer opportunities for improvements compared to others. But when problems among the super rich wealthy plans are found, they tend to be quite severe. These errors can often be very destructive to the family's wealth and their business interest.
So it's interesting. To put it in another way, it almost sounds like you tend to find both more errors and more opportunities when you're stress testing wealth plans for individuals with, let's say, a 2 million or a 10 million net worth, as opposed to the 500 million that we just talked about.
That's absolutely correct. And there are usually more financial issues, Ryan, to correct, along with more ways that financial situations can be strengthened with better solution and strategies than we currently have. So, for example, it's also true that errors tend to be relatively less severe when you have 2 to 10 million than those among the super rich. So the problems aren't as bad in terms of destroying your entire wealth or your business, although certainly problems can be potentially bad.
Sure. So I'd like to get into the weeds of the stress testing process now, Devang. Could you give me some examples of the types of issues that might arise as a result of a stress test? So you and your team, you go in and you're performing your stress test. You're looking at the cold hard numbers. You're evaluating the client's goals and aspirations. What are some examples of some of those things that you might uncover?
Right, the issues run the gamut from small or mildly problematic issues where some refinement can likely get the desired result you want to some which are really concerning. So, stress testing, for instance, can uncover how a simple switch from an existing method of accounting, for example, can change a client or help them defer a big tax bill or accelerate deductions to lower their high tax bills. Those moves might not change the entire trajectory of your financial lives, but they could be meaningful big tax savings that could be put to use in more productive ways. And from what I know, most people do not like to pay excessive taxes. Stress testing also might uncover a high impact problem like backdoors to families' asset protection plan. For example, we have seen that some extremely successful business owners and real estate entrepreneurs structure multiple company holdings in separate entities to protect them, but fail to insulate those entities from adversaries that might occur in their personal lives. Among the super rich, these backdoors are more likely to be locked with the wealth planning equivalent of a dealt bolt.
Got it. So, why is it then, Devang, that there tends to be more problems or issues with the wealth plans of the non super rich then?
Ryan, the principal reason that I find is the level of capabilities of the professionals that they have initially engaged.
Mm.
A meaningful percentage of those families who aren't super rich level of wealth may not be working with the highest quality of consummate professionals. They may not be engaging with the same level of talent, knowledge, and skills and drive as are many of the super rich. Many of the families probably dealt with professionals who, while intent on doing an amazing job for them, lack the expertise and ability to deliver an optimum result. Complicating this situation is often that such professionals are not aware that they lack the expertise in question. In other words, they do not know what they don't know. It comes down to the level of sophistication, not the level of good intention.
Sure, sure. Well, it sounds like the stress test process can be a very eye-opening one then for a given client. And I'm guessing that the people who have these stress tests done maybe aren't necessarily expecting to discover those big issues or those holes to be filled. Am I correct in saying that?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
People do often question how they could have gotten into a situation where they have made potentially serious financial mistakes. When
Sure.
it comes to wealth planning, one of the principal reasons is that the original planning was done in a piecemeal manner, developed in a fragmented or disjointed way. This often happens when various professionals the family works with, such as advisors, accountants, attorneys, don't communicate with each other about the family situation as they see it or about their respective action plans for the family.
So, Devang, in that respect, then, when somebody is coming into to do a stress test process, it's a lot that they're going to be unpacking. It's, of course, we talked about the goals and aspirations they're going to lay out on the table. Obviously, you guys are going to take a hard look at their dollars and cents. What, we've talked a lot about the negative pitfalls and what could be uncovered by a stress test, but we don't want to scare anybody away. This is ultimately a process that is beneficial. It's,
Right.
we want to uncover any sort of mistakes or shortfalls before they grow into larger issues. So that being said, what should people be doing, right now? Does everyone necessarily need to be stress testing their wealth and coming to see you guys? Or should they be looking out for maybe signs or signals that could say, hey, now it's the right time to go stress test? What does that look like?
I think the bottom line is that if you are unsure about the actions you have taken, it's a good idea to at least consider stress testing. And
Mm-hmm.
if you feel strongly that there could be errors and that you're not positioned optimally, it really makes sense into looking at stress testing. And one thing, Ryan, that we saw is I was visiting with a wealthy family, and we gave all the advisors that they had in the room, their wealth manager, the accountants, the attorneys, to a 3x5 card and said, write down the three goals that the family has.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, we showed it to the family, patriarch, and all of them had written down different things.
Mm-hmm.
So how can the team help you achieve your goals if each one is pulling you in different directions?
Right. Alignment is key. And I know we're going to be talking about just the overall theme of alignment in a lot of our episodes because, it starts there. If there are different members of the family or different members of the business thinking in two different directions, that's only going to help cause rifts, or it's going to cause confusion, all of which ultimately lead to negative outcomes towards the wealth as a whole. So anyway, Devang, I really appreciate you taking your time to chat with us today. Thanks so much for jumping aboard and sharing some more information regarding stress tests as a whole.
Thank you, Ryan.
And look, we want to thank you, our listeners, our viewers, for joining us for another installment of the show. If you liked what you saw, you liked what you heard, again, feel free to comment, subscribe, share this information with friends, family, individuals you think will benefit from it. The stress testing process is not something to take lightly, that is. It's a process that is super beneficial for anyone of any net worth level. I mean, it can help uncover some holes in your foundation, plug them before these little issues can become big issues, for your family, for your estate and wealth planning as a whole. Well, that'll do it for today's episode. So for Devang Patel, I'm Ryan Ruff saying so long, and we thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Planning Wisdom of the Super Rich.